So Daggerheart has been out for a few weeks now, and I have been running some learn to play events online for people to jump into a game and kind of see what Daggerheart is all about. And I've had the opportunity to read through most of the entire rulebook, ran some one-shot learn to play sessions online and at my local gaming store. And if you want to know my thoughts about the game, I'll put a link in this video here. But if you're playing Daggerheart online, or if you want to run a game of Daggerheart online, there are some virtual tabletops that you can definitely use out there. The official support that Daggerheart has from Darrington Press is on Roll20, which is a very popular virtual tabletop. I'll be honest to say that I'm not a fan of that virtual tabletop. Nothing against the company or anyone that uses that. I just don't find it very intuitive, and I find it a little bit clunky. It has some powerful things that it can do that is better than other virtual tabletops. It's just not my go-to, and that's not what I use for when I run games of Daggerheart. What I use and what I've been using for all the games I run for any tabletop role-playing game is Owlbear Rodeo, which is a web-based virtual tabletop that allows you to plug in different icons, graphics, maps, things like that. You can organize it in a lot of different ways, but the thing I love about Owlbear Rodeo is that it is very intuitive from a player point of view. So every time I ran Daggerheart and learned to play, we spend probably at most 5 minutes going through Owlbear Rodeo because all the tools are really easy for my players to pick up, and we hardly ever run into any issues of people having questions about how a particular tool or how a thing works in Owlbear Rodeo. Now, I've had people ask me how I set up my Owlbear Rodeo room to run a game of Daggerheart. So in this video, I'm going to show you what I put in a scene for Owlbear Rodeo to run a game of Daggerheart. What are some tips and tricks that I use, some extensions that I also use that Owlbear Rodeo offers, and then at the end of this video, I'll show you a couple other things that I use that helps me run my games at Daggerheart that's not Owlbear Rodeo related, but I think is something that you might be interested in. And I do want to say you all have loved my last video, especially this person right up here. Thank you so much. Now, before I show you this, there's a couple things I want to point out to you. First of all, this is not going to be a tutorial on how to use Owlbear Rodeo. This is just going to show you what I use in my instance of the Owlbear Rodeo virtual tabletop to run a game of Daggerheart. If you're interested in learning how to use the platform itself, I'll put a link in the description below to the company's YouTube channel that has some great tutorial videos. They're very straightforward, very well done, really short. And again, the platform itself is intuitive, so you won't have a lot of trouble learning how to use it. But if you're interested in learning how to use Owlbear Rodeo itself, I'll put some links to the YouTube channel in the description below. Second thing is I run the Sablewood Messengers quick start guide that Darrington Press has put out for Daggerheart. So if you're in one of my games for Learn to Play Daggerheart, or if you know that you're going to be playing Sablewood Messengers, I would advise you to not continue watching this video because it will spoil this for you. So without further ado, let me go ahead and show you how I use Owlbear Rodeo for Daggerheart. All right, so this is what I have set up currently for one of the scenes in the Daggerheart Quick Start Guide, the Sablewood Messengers. And I'll go through and explain to you what I have set up here. First of all, if you're looking for maps, one of the go-to places I go to all the time is actually on Reddit. As much as I don't enjoy being on that platform, there are some great resources there. And there is a subreddit called Battle Maps. And there's also a subreddit called Daggerheart. You can find some maps for the Sablewood Messengers and some other maps that people have created for D&D, for Daggerheart, for a lot of different kinds of RPGs. And this is where I got my map from. But somebody had posted a map that they created specifically for this last scene in the Sablewood Messenger. So that is what you're looking at right here is from that resource. Next, you'll see that I also have uploaded cutouts from the play guide and downtime guide that Darrington Press has actually put out. I have put this up there on every scene that I run for Owlbear Rodeo when I play and run a game of Daggerheart. So that way my players always have that to refer to. So this has been a really helpful, quick way to let players remind players what they can do in a game of Daggerheart. And I believe this is something that has been very helpful and kind of let the game go while we're trying to learn how to play. They have this to refer to while they might be waiting for their turn or they're trying to figure out what they want to do. This is something that I put up that has been very helpful for my players. Next, you'll see that I also have put up there the ranges. I do use squares as a way to help players kind of figure out, how far away is melee, very close, and all that. So I kind of put that guide up there so they have something referred to. But the neat thing about Owlbear Rodeo, let me make sure that you can see this. You may not be able to see it. So let me go ahead and put pause right here real quick for 1 second. Okay, now you should see this. But down here is the measurement tool Actually, it's a lot of good control, so it's not just a measurement tool, but usually by default with Owlbear Rodeo, it'll say like 5 feet because that's how the majority of maps in a lot of tabletop role-playing games default to. But you can actually go in here and change this. So I change it for my players to say 1 square like that, or you can even change it to 1 if you want. But 1 square kind of, makes it consistent with the helpful guide that I put at the top. And so you could change that. And what happens when you do that is that you can take the measurement tool that Owlbear Rodeo has, and then wherever you, make a point at and you start going out, it tells you how many squares you're going out here. And so you can kind of refer to that. Now, I wish there was a way in Owlbear Rodeo for it to kind of say, like, once you get to this point, you're within close range, very close, things like that. That's a little bit cumbersome and not something that's easy to do. So until somebody makes an extension for you to be able to do that, this is actually a good substitute. So that way you can tell people that, up to close range is anywhere within 6 squares of your token, so they can just kind of measure from where they're at and see how far they can go before they have to make an agility roll if they want to go beyond that. All right, next, how do I show my players how much fear I have accrued? Now, this is up to every GM. You can show how much fear tokens you have to your players if you want. You don't have to. The rule book says that it's completely up to you. But the way I show it to my players is that I've actually created an icon for fear tokens, which I just use the Daggerheart symbol, put in Photoshop, change the colors, and add text to it. But whenever I want to show them how many fear tokens I have, I actually went ahead and for each scene, put 12 fear tokens at the bottom of the map so they can always see this. And because you can only have a maximum of 12, you can put this out ahead of time. And I hide it by default. But then when I gain a fear, I just double click on it. Oh, I got to delete that because I'm still on the measure tool. My bad. So I'm going to hit select. I'm going to double click on it and then just reveal it. So that way the players can see how many fear tokens I have. Now, one tip I will give you, because this happens all the time, is that my players will kind of just grab anything on the map and just, start clicking on it, and they accidentally move things. So what I've learned is that if it's something you want to keep stationary, like your map or the helpful guides I have up there, the range measurements in the fear tokens, you want to lock it by hitting the lock symbol on each of those graphic icons. So that way no one can move it, not even you. So that's how I show how much fear I have. And then once I use that fear, I just hide it. So it's a really easy way to track it. There are some counters in Owlbear Rodeo you can definitely use. The thing about those counters is that they're not very big. So for my players to see how many tokens are on that counter for that icon, it's very small. So they have to kind of zoom in and then zoom back out to be able to see that. This kind of gives it a more visual presence for them to be able to quickly see how many tokens I have for fear for them to look at without having to look at the very small number for the counter extension that they have in Owlbear Rodeo. Speaking of icons and graphics, I also use the Daggerheart logo to do a ritual countdown. Now, I put the logo up there for a reason because I needed to have some sort of token for what I'm going to show you here next. So I do have an extension up here in the top left-hand corner called Pretty Sordid. This is actually an initiative counter or initiative tracker. So you won't use this in Daggerheart because there's no initiative in Daggerheart, right? But I use this as kind of a hack for a countdown that I ever use in my games, especially for Sablewood Messengers, where there is a D8 countdown that they have you use. And basically what I do to show my players where the countdown is at, I just actually use the rounds to tell them that the round represents where the countdown timer is currently stationed. So whenever they eliminate an adversary, then I can just go over here and reduce it, and they can track that. The number up here, that's the initiative number you put in there. I just put a number in there just for the sake of having one in there, but I usually use the round tracker, the arrows, to kind of track the countdown going up or down that way. So the players have been able to really see where it's at by going to that extension and looking at the current round it's on. Now with Daggerheart, if you want to use digital dice, Demiplane does have something like that because they have the Daggerheart character sheets, digital character sheets that you can use. However, it's not something that you can roll and then share it out with the rest of your group. So you're kind of relying on having to tell people what you rolled anyways. And so I let my players use the Demiplane digital dice if they want to use it, because it does help them kind of, figure out what they need to roll in order to do the thing they want to do. I also let my players use physical dice for this, but Owlbear Rodeo does have digital dice if you want people to be able to show what they roll in front of everybody. So there is an extension called Dice. It's by Owlbear Rodeo. You click on this, and initially it just shows you these set of TTRPG dice, 7 of them. That's the standard one, and they're black. But if you click on the D20 at the top, it gives you different colors. And then down here, there's 2 D20s with 2 different colors. If you click on that, then it gives you all these different colors you can choose from. So if I'm a player and I'm going to be rolling my duality dice, I could take this D12 and say, this is going to be my hope die. I'm going to put right there. And then I might want to say the red D12 is going to be my fear dice. And so I can roll those 2 dice and it shows to everybody what I rolled. Now, if you have modifiers you need to add on there because you're using a specific trait that gives you like a +2, or if you're going to be burning a hope to use your experience, you can go down here and actually add in here the bonuses that you're going to have. So you can do a +2 if you want, or if it's a -1, you can do that here. And that's how you add it to the roll when you actually do the roll. Now, I would disregard disadvantage and advantage because that's still using D&D rules, so it's not going to be adding a D6 for the advantage or disadvantage here. And I'll explain to you here in a second what I do in order to add the advantage or disadvantage to the roll, because it's not going to be straightforward as much as I like. But once you have your modifiers and your 2 dice, your duality dice on there, you could hit roll, and it rolls it. So that's going to be 12. Counting up total is 16. And then this was my fear dice. So I rolled 16 with fears. And everybody that is in the Owlbear Rodeo room can see what you rolled here. Now, if you have advantage or disadvantage, this is the downfall, or one of the limitations, rather, of the dice extension for Owlbear Rodeo, is that there's not a way for you to add it and then tell it to add to the roll or subtract it necessarily. I'm sorry, let me take that step back. You can actually add it to the roll if you want to as an advantage die. If it's disadvantage, you can't subtract it. But let's say I'm rolling with advantage here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my hope die. I'm going to click on my fear die. And then I'm going to say, all right, this is my advantage die right here. I have all the things I need to roll with advantage. I go ahead and roll that up. And you can see that it's going to be 15 with hope. So that is how you can actually roll with advantage in this way. But disadvantage, you're actually going to be limited because you cannot put a D6 in there and tell it to, take away the result in that case. So there's a couple ways you can do it. Probably the simplest way is you can say, all right, I'm going to go ahead and, roll my 2 duality dice, and then I'll roll a D6 and just subtract that total from whatever I rolled. That's probably the easiest way to do it. But if you want to use digital dice, that is in front of everybody, so that way everybody can see what you rolled, there is an extension in Owlbear Rodeo for you to use that. It does take a couple of steps for you to use, but once everybody kind of gets in the groove, they know how to do it, and you're off. Now, one other thing that I use that I'll tell you all here as well too is I use this extension called Flip. Flip does a lot of really cool things, and what happens with Flip is you have the option to be able to take 2 graphics and do something called bind them, which means that you can, put them together and flip them back and forth. So I took the graphic for Daggerheart's Ancient Skeleton, put it in Photoshop and colored it to kind of give it a little bit more livelihood, make it a little bit more livelier for the game. And what I did is I put both of these graphics in here. And then what I'm going to do is hit shift click, and I'm going to go to the cog here and call bind it. And you can see that it has actually disappeared. The other one has, but if I right click on this and say flip it, then it shows the other token that I had on there. So it just kind of flips it back and forth. So whenever the players actually eliminate an adversary, to show that that adversary has died, I just right click and hit flip it. And then now that represents the adversaries, there, its body's there, but it's no longer in play because it's died, because I tell them that, when there's no color on it, that means that they're no longer in play in combat anymore because they are dead or knocked out or whatever happened to them. Now, this is not Daggerheart specific, but this is a great digital tool that I really love about Owlbear Rodeo that I haven't seen a lot of other virtual tabletops have as an option as well too, but we talk about safety tools in our tabletop role-playing games all the time, and Daggerheart does mention using safety tools as well. And there is an extension, it's a third-party extension called Rumble that I'm going to click right up here. It looks like a chat bubble, but what's really cool about this is that, yes, there is a chat option that you can use in Owlbear Rodeo. I don't really use that because usually I run my games at Discord, so we're chatting in there anyways. But it has these really cool tools up here that someone can click on if they want to raise their hand. They can raise their hand. And then if they want to say like, hey, we're approaching a topic that I'm not entirely comfortable with, so this is okay for now, but kind of proceed with caution, you can hit the yellow exclamation point. And the neat thing about this is that it's anonymous. So if somebody doesn't want to call themselves out and say that, this is making me uncomfortable, they can do that and feel safe in being able to do so. And you could do the same thing with the X icon as well too, is you click on it and just say someone's concerned with the situation, talk it out. Now, here is the caveat is that if you're in a situation where as a GM, you're not sure why that X card was thrown out there, you might have to ask somebody to DM you to let you know, what was it specifically, because maybe it's not clear to you. But I do love the anonymity that this tool provides you for X cards and lines of veils and everything like that. This is a great tool to use in your games. And this is another reason why I love Owlbear Rodeo is that it provides that tool that I haven't seen a lot of other virtual tabletops have that as an option. If that's not the case, if you've seen that in other virtual tabletops, please, leave a comment and let us know, because I'm always interested to know what kind of tools other virtual tabletops have. So that's how you use Owlbear Rodeo to run a game of Daggerheart. There is a bonus tip that I want to show you all here that has nothing to do with Owlbear Rodeo, but I think is really cool. If you use a tool called Obsidian, let me show you a little cool hack that you can use that emulates what Daggerheart is trying to do with their own adversary stat blocks that you can actually recreate in Obsidian. Okay, so one of the cool things that Daggerheart has done with their setup and their design for running Quick Start Guide, and I think for any of the adventures that they've put out for anybody to use, is the really creative use of their adversary stat blocks. First of all, if you have not seen the adversary stat blocks, I think they designed it very well to allow people to be able to quickly find information and simplify it so that way you're not having to look for multiple places to try to find the thing that you're trying to have the adversary accomplish or the player to accomplish. But one of the cool things they did in the stat block is instead of having like 4 separate stat blocks or having like a separate line for each of the same kind of adversary that you have, they actually put it inside the stat block for this adventure here. So there's 3 Thistlefolk Ambushers, and they put in the row of hit points that you have to mark if they ever take hit points, and stress. So it's all there within the stat block, so you don't have to go to 2 different locations to track those things and to find that information on their stat block. It's all one spot for you to find. Now, if you don't have Demiplane, or if you have this Quick Start Adventure but it's in a PDF format and you use Obsidian, there is a simple and great way for you to recreate this stat block inside of Obsidian. And this is how I have set it up. You can see that I have copied the information for that stat block and put it in here using Obsidian's layouts and headings and things like that. But you can see here, I have recreated the individual adversaries, hit points, and stress lines here to be able to use to track. So that way I'm looking at one place for all my information about the adversary. And then when they take hit points, I just click it. So when I get to the third one, I can tell them that this ambusher has been eliminated and defeated. And so this is a great way to be able to reduce where you're looking up this information at and be able to actively track all this, hit points and things like this interactively with your adversaries as you're running the game. So how does one actually do this? So I'm not a coder. I don't understand all the things with markdown language. I know some stuff, but not to the extent of how I could recreate all of this. So I'm going to show you the code that's in here so you can recreate this on their own. But I remember trying to emulate this with D&D with spell slots, and someone gave me this trick, and I can't remember who it was, so I apologize, but I pretty much copied that idea and put it in here for Daggerheart's adversary stop block. So in order to recreate this, here is the code. You have the it's like a quote bracket. So I forget the technical name for it. I apologize. But you have the close bracket, exclamation point checks, and then the pipe, no dash I. I forget what that stands for, but I think it has something to do with how it's laid out. So that's been really helpful to kind of put it that way. And then you put the name of the adversary, number 1, and then you can put in these hit points, but this is the code that you need to put in here to follow. The biggest thing to pay attention to is that you have to put in the dash, space, bracket, and then space right after the bracket. If you don't put a space after the bracket, it's going to mess it up. So I'll show you what that looks like. So I do that, remove the space, and you can see how it doesn't really look correct like how it's supposed to be. And that's because there's no space after it. If you put a space after it, it'll fix it. Okay, so I'm going to put this on the screen. You can pause this so you can kind of see how this looks. But yeah, so you can kind of fiddle around with this and get a sense for it. If you know how markdown language works, this is probably going to be easy for you. If you're not entirely sure how markdown language works, maybe you can at least start with this, and then you can leave comments if there's something that's not working out, and maybe the community can help you understand how this works for you as well. But yeah, this is a really easy way to do this, and then you find it in one spot in your Obsidian, so you can just look at one place to find all the information while you're running the game, what's going on in the story, and then the adversary stat block with every individual adversary that's in that scene with their own pool of hit points and stress. So that's it. That's how I use Owlbear Rodeo to run a game of Daggerheart. I hope this was helpful and insightful for you. If you've been using Owlbear Rodeo to run Daggerheart and there's any tips or tricks that I have not included in this video, please leave a comment and let us know so that way we can include those. And, the more strategies that we all figure out on how to use a virtual tabletop to run our favorite games, the better. So definitely leave some of those tips, tricks, any other comments or thoughts you have about using Owlbear Rodeo for Daggerheart. And I don't know what video I'm going to do next, but thanks for watching this and thanks for sticking around.